So I wanted to share a little bit more deeply and giving some examples of the potency of using the recipe that I'm sharing with others within the arena of birth giving, and how I've witnessed and seen this approach to really nourish that that journey for a woman, not only during labor and the birth giving, but in a very deep process of preparation for that very big transformational and initiatory event. And I think to truly understand the depth of what we're offering, you need, in relationship to birth, you need to be able to understand that birth is not only a physiological event, and I'm sure most of you are watching this are aware of that, and it is a deeply transformational experience, and it is, the transformation is happening at a very physiological level, and it is expressing the kind of metaphysics of a very, very deep initiation through the physiology. So really at the core of our work is we have a big focus of journeying through the body, through the somatic experience. And so we're always bringing the body with us, and really our kind of place of enthusiasm and play is really investigating deeply the processes of awakening through the physiology, to a point where you come to realize that every aspect of your body is kind of a portal or a gateway to a deeper aspect of consciousness. And then this over time allows us to really come into a remembering of the or an actualization, let's say, of that potential of awakening in form. So it leads in essence to a greater mastery over form. So the simplicity of what we're offering, we speak of in terms of grounding into silence through the body and really cultivating deeper realizations of the absolute and kind of the self, true self, through the body, or cultivating an awareness of where that remembering is in relationship to the body. So this continual emphasis of bringing the body with us is very essential, because the body really demonstrates to us and reveals to us the unconscious. So the unconscious mind speaks through sensation, through patterns of holding, through changes in the physiology. And so if we include the body, we're really closing the gap between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And really, because the physiology brings us closer to the root of our being, because in a way, another way of understanding that is that our consciousness first forms at a physiological level, and then that blossoms into the capacity to conceptualize and to kind of have a cognitive experience. But the pre-conceptual comes online first, and that is a very spatial, physiological, visceral experience. So we're really navigating that kind of deep waters of the unconscious through the somatic journeying, and we're using silence to usher in the grace and the unification, which is really what silence does. It kind of drives everything according to nature. So this is a really profound way for women to prepare themselves for the depth and the opening that occurs during the birth-giving experience, because in a way what is happening through that deepening surrender through the body, a woman is essentially plunging into deeper levels of the absolute, but through the body in form. So depending on her cultivation of that, or her innate receptivity to that depth within herself, might be very indicative of how gracefully or easily she moves through that journey, and really coming down to her capacity for surrender. So, and you know, anyone who is sitting in a birth experience and kind of tuning in, you can feel as a woman progresses through labor, you can feel the states of consciousness as she expands. They are deepening and developing, and it's very palpable, the dropping. There's a point actually where women really do drop very deeply into emptiness, or that is what is being ushered in. And so depending on her willingness to do that might depend on how that looks at a kind of on the surface level. But what that can often look like is a very deep turning inwards and a quietening, and that's really her going back to that source point in herself, from where the rest of the labor can unfold. So as a result, preparing yourself for a birth-giving experience, or holding someone else during that preparation, if you can have a simple way of deepening into that primordial silence through the body, which we often refer to as womb space, because that silence has a nurturing quality to it. It's kind of like returning back into the womb. So if you can cultivate that during your pregnancy, you're already making that journey, and you're going to be making it easier for yourself, because you, along the way, in meditating in this way, you are expanding and deepening your capacity for surrender. Because when we sit in meditation and hold the somatic experience in the way that I show people, we're really working into the transformation of self through that allowing and through that surrendering into the silence. And that transformation of the self is the willingness to become something new. And of course, giving birth, there isn't a greater kind of expression of that transformation into something new, you know, because you become something new through giving birth to a baby and becoming a mother or a father. So through sitting in meditation in this way, and then having, you know, the taster of that surrender and transformation of self, you develop in yourself a comprehension. You develop in yourself a comprehension of that process, which develops faith in that process. Faith that if I surrender into this, you know, one of the big questions, if I fully let go into this, will I be taken care of? Will my body be taken care of? Will my baby be taken care of? And, you know, that is something that we visit deeply as we move into and touch those edges of that deeper darkness and silence through the body. And so as you journey with the somatic experience and then kind of move into that organic unfolding and surrender, one of the things that occurs there as you be changed through that process and through that cultivation of union, you also deepen in your realizations of yourself as that silence that is being surrendered into, as that darkness that is the source of all creation. And so as you develop that realization and that wisdom, it then makes the surrendering, the faith becomes greater, because you recognize you are what is being surrendered into. So that is ultimately where this recipe can take you. So I get so excited about women kind of using this way as they're preparing for the birth giving journey. And of course, it's going to speak more to some than others. And I'm very excited for those that it really does speak to. It really does speak to you, that you can know that this invitation is being very deeply held by myself and Thesa, to really offer a depth and the ground of being to the consciousness of the birth giving experience. So I want to give some examples of how I've seen this in action, you know, in kind of the real life scenarios, and share some stories. So on one occasion, I was working with a woman, and she ended up in hospital during, I think it was a couple of months before her due date. And she was having very high heart palpitations. And so these palpitations were very scary for her. And she was put in a ward, and the ward had a lot of people in that had COVID, and she obviously didn't have COVID. So she phoned me, or I think she texted me actually, and said, this is what's happening, and they want to do a scan, which obviously also was a big deal for her, because she didn't really want to have an X-ray done. So she's sitting in this COVID ward. She's quite obviously triggered. Her heart's racing. She doesn't know what's happening. And there are people in the ward with COVID, and she doesn't have COVID. So this is a very vulnerable situation. So I immediately remind her of what we've been doing. And I think we were texting actually. So I invite her to go drop deeply into silence through her body, or to start resourcing calm through the body. So immediately that takes the focus off everything in the environment and brings the awareness back into oneself. And she dropped very deeply into silence, because she had done that enough times to really know the pathway there within herself, through allowing. And within minutes, I think, of her doing that, a male nurse who became the kind of hero of the hour came in, and he said, gosh, we need to get you out of here. Let's get you a private room. And he moved her to a private room. Her heart rate went down, and things just started reorganizing according to that foundation of calm. So this is a very simple example of the potency of that level of source remembering through the body, or just ushering in silence. It starts to inform the environment and bring in nature. It can allow nature to reorganize your experience of yourself, your body, and the people in the environment according to that foundation. So another very beautiful experience was, you can see, get the smiles going just thinking about it, was during a birth in England. And we were, gosh, it was a very fast birth. Baby came very premature. And I have really worked with this woman a lot. We have, you know, even prior to her pregnancy. And so she really had a very deep capacity for allowing through the physical body and deepening into silence. So we're really in the thick of it, and things are moving quite quickly, and she starts to shake intensely, and it's quite violent shaking, her whole body. And so a little bit kind of shocked, she looks at me and sort of asks me, you know, what's happening. And I go into silence, and all that comes out is Shakti. So I just say the word Shakti to her, which I know for her that is, I'm just going to wait for the aeroplane to go over. I'm not quite sure of how much that's going to disturb the recording. So where was I? Yes, so I say Shakti to her, and her whole being she's just like, oh my gosh, right. And so she goes, I've never seen anyone surrender so deeply into shaking. And it was divine. And she just disappeared deeply into the tremoring, and it started to move from shaking into waving, which is something you experience in meditation if you really go into shaking, particularly if there's shock or fear in the system. When silence starts to come in through the allowing, it begins to wave and become ecstatic. So she deeply disappeared into it, and then she opens her eyes again and she's ecstatic, and she says to me, this is just like having an orgasm. Of which, you know, all of us in the room are just electric with her, you know, because she's just exuding this electricity and of Shakti. And it really was pouring off her. I had a hand on one of her feet, and her friend had a hand on the other foot, and it was just the bliss moving through our hands was so beautiful. So I feel that, you know, she does have, she has cultivated that, and that's beautiful, because it meant in that hour of need, when all that was needed was the invitation to surrender, to go into the experience so deeply. And she did that, and it would just, I think my experience of that was that really quickly moved her from, let her body move through in a very small amount of time any kind of shock or trauma of how quickly baby was coming into a state of ecstasy, and baby really just came out after that. And yeah, so I'll just share one more, because I love sharing these stories. I wish I had more stories too. I'm excited. I love birth stories. They're so powerful. It's very powerful resourcing silence for the delivery of the placenta. And as many of you know, who are kind of conscious around birth, that kind of delicate phase of the delivery of the placenta, you know, it's very conducive for a woman to be in darkness, to have a very quiet and calm environment around her, so that final stage of labor can kind of fulfill itself. But often women are not in an environment, if they're in a hospital, or the people in the environment aren't able to support that quiet, silent space. It's very powerful if a woman knows how to just go in and be deeply still and silent. And I've done that with a woman. We dropped deeply into silence, and the placenta just kind of trickled out, and it was after you know, really quite a long time of waiting. So, of course, there are so many nuances to the birth giving journey, and I'm adding really the kind of foundational layer. And there are many things that make up a healthy birth giving experience, inclusive of, you know, having a supportive team around you, and kind of coherent relationships, and good midwives that you can place your trust in. But I will say that you know, I was working with one woman who, through half an hour of deep resourcing of the absolute, kind of, she had gone into labor and things were not organizing in her environment anywhere near what she wanted. She didn't have midwives around her she felt she could relax into. They were wanting her to do things that she didn't want to do. Labor was moving slowly. So she dropped in half an hour and really resourced the absolute and let that really inform things. And an amazing new doctor came into the space, and she was called actually Sophia, which kind of added to the beauty of it. Those of you that are aware of the goddess Sophia and her role within creation. So, and then from then on, her birth giving experience in the hospital environment was much more graceful because she felt that she had the right team around her. And it really was intimate to her resourcing of that source remembering and letting that inform. So yeah, powerful stuff. And there are so many layers here. Another one, which I won't go deeply into now, is of course trauma healing. And this is something that we explore using our recipe. We're very aware, trauma sensitive. And what we're doing is we're kind of checking and clearing in ourselves any past experiences or kind of painful dialogues that we have around birth giving, and then using the recipe to let them kind of wash away into something deeper, and to let the conceptual framing of our journey you know, be born of that contact with silence and true nature, and really developing sovereignty through inner union. So yes, so many layers here, and I'm very excited to make this journey. I have a very small, beautiful group of women forming, and we actually will be starting fairly soon in June. And we haven't organized the times and dates yet. So if you are interested in joining, whether you are a birth keeper and interested in this for your own developing sovereignty as a birth keeper and how to transmit this environment of primordial silence, and offer the keys of our recipe to your clients, or whether you are a birthing mother or father to be, and really wanting to develop your consciousness around this birth giving journey. There are 2 women so far booked on who are pregnant, and then we have some doulas who are booked on. So it's going to be a beautiful mix. Great. So I'll put a link in below the video for the full invitation. And if you enjoyed what I shared, please feel free to share. And with anyone who might be resonant for this particular way that we're offering